interior of the Outback. When I first got in this, and granted this is a fully loaded trim level, I was absolutely astounded at how good this interior space is. From material choice to the leather and the stitching, there's actual geometry and style to the way that the panels are done. This is not something I'm really used to with Subaru. Typically, if you've seen any of my videos before, Subaru has a pretty good history at cost cutting. And it's always maintained a really good simplicity to it. Everything worked, but it just felt super generic. And this doesn't. And I swear, if you'd cover up the Subaru logo here, and of course, if you hit all these millions of buttons on the steering wheel, you probably wouldn't think it was a Subaru. And that is a great thing in some cases. The fit and finish, the plastics, the softness, the suppleness of everything is great. And the biggest thing, this feels very, very quiet in here. Something else that Subaru isn't particularly known for. And because of that, it elevates the serenity of the driving experience and your overall comfort in here. While I'm talking about that, the seating surfaces, super plush. I drove this a lot, and at no point did I feel fatigued. It is a huge space. If you are a bigger person, I'd be shocked if you didn't fit in here. If you're a smaller person, it just is a really, really good mix of comfort and style that most people are going to really appreciate. The back seats are the same way. You can fit normal people. The cargo capacity is tremendous. In fact, the way that you configure the seats, you drop them, I mean, this is so usable and so functional. Add in the ride height, which has true ground clearance that is better than pretty much almost every CUV that's on the market. So this is a great blend between a full-blown SUV and almost a smaller truck. It does everything so well. If you're somebody that needs the all-wheel drive capability of a Subaru, has a family, or you truly go or you live in places like Colorado where there's rough terrain, you're going to be so happy with the way that they blended all of this together on the interior space. All right, you're waiting for some of the negatives or the problems with this interior. So if you opt for this top level trim, you're going to get in here for the first time like I did, and you're going to see this enormous screen in the center stack area. I'm like, here we go again. Let's see. So I turn on the car, it's cold, and I want to access the seat heater. Well, guess what? There's no physical button for the seat heater anymore, or the seat coolers. It's in the touch screen. Well, okay, that's fine. I go to hit the seat heater button. Well, nothing's happening, so I hit it again. And it's still lagging and delaying because you're waiting for this thing to boot up for the first 25 to 35 seconds when you get in the car. And I feel like we're in the Windows 95 era of car infotainment. And I'm going to be just completely blunt. This is absolute and utter bullshit. There's just no excuse for it. There is absolutely no comprehensible way that a manufacturer should let this out the door and be okay. The entire fix-it-later mentality should not be in a car. Because if you're paying, it's one thing if you're paying $1,000 for a phone or a laptop. Another when you're paying $40,000 in 6 or 7 years of a car loan to be stuck with something like this. It's just not cool. And I don't care what the industry says. Well, everybody else is doing it. Consumers just want a big screen. No, consumers want shit that works. That's what they want. And this just, I'm sorry, it doesn't work the way that it should yet. If you're not ready, if it's not ready for prime time, don't release it. So I'm not going to recommend you get this car with this bullshit in it. Get the lower trim level without it, and you're going to be a lot more happy with it. But if you have to have a big screen for some reason and you want to deal with all the million menus you have to jump through, and then you still have a million buttons on the steering wheel, check it out and make sure it does everything that you want it to do. Make sure it responds quickly when you turn on the car before you buy it. I'm just telling you that. But let's head out on the road and see how this car does driving. Setting off in the Subaru Outback. This thing moves. Let's talk about that first. The 2.4 liter that's in here is a turbocharged motor, and It has a great sense of thrust. It slowly kind of goes off the line, sadly, because of the CVT, but then once the power picks up, it just pulls and pulls. Now, granted, the CVT enjoys itself, fake shifting, and I feel like that's one of the most negative parts of this experience, because as good as the motor is in here, and as smooth as it is for a Subaru engine, the transmission is just kind of rubber bandy. It's unpredictable in its behavior. Sometimes it kind of like does these rough fake shifts for no reason because there's no gears. And then sometimes it will hold the revs where it's not shifting as much. And I find that it's so distracting while you're driving. But here's the thing. If you're driving this like a putter and you're not driving it hard, you barely notice it because it is really smooth. It feels extraordinarily refined for a Subaru product. It's quiet. I mean, there's literally no road noise coming from this thing, and it is like a couch on wheels. It is so softly sprung that you literally feel nothing on the road, and that is so welcoming in a car like this. The other part is it has legitimate ground clearance, and I'm not kidding you. You know, all these SUVs and these companies constantly talk about, oh, look, our cars are off-roady. I spent some time with Jessica, who's the rep for Subaru, and every year I go on like an off-road course with her, and we just, basically BS. And these things always go on like the off-road paths that trucks go on, and it's literally a non-issue. So that means if you're somebody that is in a bad climate or an area where you need to take trails, or you're in hills, or you're in like snow and bad weather, these things do just as well as a truck or a larger SUV on most conditions because you have the ground clearance. And then the big thing, the underbody, the architecture. It has a true all-wheel drive system that's not just a basic on-demand setup. It has symmetrical all-wheel drive, which means your half shafts are equal length on every corner of the vehicle. It feels much more rear-wheel drive biased than most of the front-wheel drive setups. And when you're turning and accelerating, you feel the rear start to rotate around. Now, every other time, if you're cornering, it always feels more understeer prone, which means the front end washes out first before the back, and it feels much safer that way. But there's this good balance of everything that this thing is able to do driving. Now, one of the other few negatives about this car is Subaru's start-stop system. And since they're using a boxer engine, and I'm not going to get into the technical explanation of that right now, the way the engine's designed is it's not designed to be stopped and started. So when you pull your foot off the brake, it is one of the most rough, obnoxious restarts of any car you're going to get in. This engine and this design was never designed to be stopped and started, and there's sometimes when it restarts, it feels like somebody hit you. That's how abrupt and obnoxious it is, because there's no real way to balance the engine, the motor mounts, and all the things to keep the vibration out of it. Thank God you can turn it off, but they need to give you a permanent way to disable it as an owner. You literally have to go in here every single time and turn it off. Now, it exists purely to try to help fuel economy and emissions, which I get if you're driving in a parking lot every single day, like in LA traffic or New York traffic, where you're sitting there and you're just generating emissions, the car should be off. But I'm never in that situation. Every time I come to a stop sign, it is so annoying. So I have to go in here and turn it off every time I start. But, and I'm serious, this thing, I mean, the problems with it are so minor. I'm going to take you through a couple corners, which, what is that going to tell you? I'm going to explain kind of the handling. This does have a lot of roll. It has a lot of roll through turns, and I'm willing to accept that in a lot of ways because this thing just rides so comfortably over every pavement type that it is a total non-issue for me because of the type of car this is, the type of cruiser, the type of hauler. You're not going to be flying around corners in it. That's not what it's for. And I would rather it be true to what it's trying to do, and that is somewhat off-road capable and being able to go anywhere over any pavement type without giving you fatigue. And that's its biggest thing. Now, when you accelerate harder, if you are like in mountainous roads, you got to get your braking done because there's a lot of nosedive, and then you just have to ease off, and there's definitely understeer here. It's Subaru. They always set up suspension. They always set up cars to feel more safe up front. They're never going to feel this sense of being out of control, and their safety systems are set up the same way. It's always going to come in, traction stability controls, always going to come in and kind of pull you back. And it's just, I don't know, it's one of those things that you have to get used to with this car and be prepared for it, and you're going to be okay with it. The last thing to talk about is Subaru's eyesight system, and this is a further evolution of it. You have 2 cameras mounted up here. It monitors kind of the left and the right lanes for lines, and then that's what helps with the frontal crash mitigation and the lane keep assist. Now they've also added a driver monitoring system, which has an infrared light in the center here, and then it uses cameras to monitor your eyes, whether they're open or closed, and it will do facial scanning, and you have to kind of set that for your face per driver, and that's also how it's able to tell what driver got in the car. Now, one of the things that I don't like is cars with telematics. I don't know if this data is being used in any other way. Is it being uploaded to Subaru over the cloud? I'm not positive, and I need to find out that information, but that's one of the things I really don't like in modern day cars is that type of stuff. But at the same token, it works extremely well, and I played around with it a lot. I closed my eyes while I'm driving when, you shouldn't be, just to test to see how good it is at night. And it works remarkably well. If I close my eyes, or I keep my head down long enough, it's going to beep and tell you to keep your eyes on the road, because it's assuming, well, 1, you're probably looking at your phone, or 2, you're falling asleep. It kind of has 2 different alerts. And then if you sit there and you're weaving back and forth long enough, it will tell you need to take a break. And I think that is a great feature for somebody that is really distracted driving. It's a constant reminder. Or if you have a younger driver that is always on their phone, or married to their phone, or anybody really for that matter, this might save your ass. And I think it's an interesting implementation that seems really well fleshed out and works. But aside from that, let's get into the final thoughts where I'll talk about the good and bad of this car. Final thoughts on the Subaru Outback. Now there's something that completely surprised me here. It's the fact that this thing is really refined to drive, and quiet, and comfortable, something that Subaru isn't particularly known for. The way that they've set up the suspension here, it glides over everything. You don't hear a ton of road noise coming from this, or wind noise, which is new to me, and it handles and is mostly really fun to operate. And I know fun is kind of a subjective, dirty word in cars, because what defines fun? Well, let me tell you what it defines, how I define it. The 2.4 liter turbo engine that's in this specific trim level is great. It feels good all the time. It picks up right away. It revs out cleanly, and you always feel like there's more than adequate amount of power to drive this. Well, some companies try to give you all the torque all at once, and then it kind of dies out when you rev it out. This doesn't have that problem. The tuning feels good for a Subaru product as well. There was nothing really weird. There wasn't a ton of hesitation, and granted, it was a little bit colder out too, so that helps. The only thing I could really give this thing a solid ding on is the overall performance of the CVT. And if you drive it normal and sedate and slow, you'll never notice it. But when you start to get it on a little bit more elevation, where the engine has to downshift or simulate downshifts, you hear a lot of CVT whine coming from this. There's a lot of belt or pulley whine. You also get this kind of strange, just unpredictable behavior. And one of the best things about kind of torque converted automatics or dual clutch automatics or most traditional automatics is they're very predictable. They're always consistent in programming. If you hit the gas, it's going to downshift predictably. It's always going to upshift predictably. And with the continuous variable operation, sometimes this feels like it wants to fake shift. Other times it just kind of holds on to revs. It's this disconcerting feeling that something's not right. It distracts you from the driving experience when you're driving it a little bit more spiritedly. And that's why that's one of the big downers with it. But if you're somebody that is not really a car person and you just don't even know what that feels like or sounds like, it might not even bother you. The other part about this is the interior and the overall configurability of this. The ride height is that of a small truck. Literally, it annihilates most CUVs. So if you really want road clearance, ground clearance, and flexibility of interior volume and kind of cargo capacity, this thing is killer. But again, this is going to be a family vehicle or something you're going to haul with. You are absolutely going to love it. Take it for a drive. I'm so impressed. I can't say it enough. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.